Um, and then we will just dive right into the questions that we have prepared. And you can start and popcorn to each other, whoever is comfortable with starting.
I can start. Hey everyone, my name is Bree. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm one of the well-being coaches specifically for undergraduate students. Really happy to be in this event with all of you all today and to talk about mental health and supporting that. I popcorn over to Megan.
Thank you, Bree. I knew you were going to summon me, so I rechanged my name. I'm not Sky. Hey, Sky. My name is Dr. Megan. I use she, her pronouns. I am a staff psychologist here at CAPS. I've been here for 6 years with Black CAPS, and I'm also the program coordinator for Outreach, Equity, and Inclusion. So we can talk a little bit about workshops that might be our community relevant that we can talk about. Happy to be here with you all. I will popcorn it to Maya.
Thank you. I was receiving that energy. I was like, ooh, it's coming to me. It's coming to me. Hey, Tom, so good to see you. This is exciting to see y'all's faces. I've missed y'all, but my name's Maya. I use she, her pronouns. I'm also one of the well-being coaches on the Wellbeing and Stanford team. And my role is dedicated to supporting the students affiliated with community centers and ethnic theme houses. So my bread and butter, clearly just like my favorite spaces on campus. So glad to be in space with y'all today. I will popcorn to Kashi.
Hi, Maya. Hello, everyone. My name is Kashi. I use they, them pronouns, ella in Spanish for the Spanish speakers. And I work alongside Bree and Maya, specifically serving the ethnic theme dorms and the cultural centers. And I'm not sure if there's another panelist that needs to go next.
I believe that was everyone. Yeah, so we can just dive right into questions. And so for participants, definitely feel free to pop questions in the chat or send them to Sky, Howie, or I directly if you're not comfortable with having it in the chat, and we'll ask it for you. But we're going to go into a couple of prepared questions before opening it up to students generally. So our first question, a little bit hard hitting, I think, is what drew you to this profession and kind of what experiences kind of guided you to be sitting in this Zoom room with us here today?
I can kick us off. I've reflected on this question a lot. Pre-COVID in planes, when someone asks what you do and I say psychologist, they're like, oh, let me tell you my business and why did you do that? So I've been reflecting on this question a lot. But I can share in this safe space that I'm the baby. In Jamaica, we call that the wash belly. And so I have 2 older siblings, and my older sister still has treatment-resistant depression. So I saw many bouts and episodes of depression for her. She's also a STEM scholar. She pursued physics. And so growing up with an older sibling who had depression, seeing her to go to therapy and come back, I was like, oh, I want to be a part of that magic. So majored in psychology all the way up. And I still today have a soft spot for Black STEM folks. So that's one of my areas of expertise. But family history, joy of narrative and what people go through, as well as liberation psychology. How do we actually heal? So all those things put together really make it this, being a psychologist and holding space for people, my passion point.
I can go next. My story is definitely a little bit winding in terms of how I find myself here. I was originally in medicine, so went to med school, graduated. I was a pediatric resident here at Stanford, but encountered a lot of mental health challenges with just like medical culture being so intense and very much denying of what you need to take care of yourself as you take care of others. So really didn't resonate with that path. So left medicine and sort of through a series of random events that I won't get into, found myself into this position where I still get to care about people at the outset of their lives, going into the rest of their lives, and really focus on their mental health. keeping them well, seeing how they need to be to best thrive and go for what they want in life. So that is a short version of how I find myself here.
I can pop in next. I think I'll also give the short version, but I think my experience as an undergrad, being Indigenous, Latinx, Fly, all of those intersecting identities, and being so far away from home. I'm originally from Wisconsin. And just being away from my community, being away from the types of communities that I'm used to being surrounded by, that culture shock really hit me hard when I came to Stanford. And so kind of having that as an undergrad experience, and then being so closely connected with the various community centers, living in an ethnic theme house. I lived in Muwekma like 3 to 4 years. I lived on campus. All of those things I think really factored into my current relationship with the institution, for good and bad. But I think it just informs the way I show up for the work that I do, to be able to be a support person in what I hope is a large network of support people that students can create for themselves. That the goal is that you'll create multiple layers of support for yourself across the university, amongst your peers, staff in the centers, your faculty, supportive TAs, your dorm community, student activity communities. All of these different places can offer different aspects of support. So for me, I kind of fell into this role through a series of good working relationships and maintaining some professional connections throughout my time at Stanford. I've kind of had a couple of different roles during my time here. And just having those relationships across the years made me aware of this role and this opportunity. And that's kind of how I found myself in this space. And so for me, it always has been and always will be about community, because that's literally how I got this job, was just being in community with the right kind of people, and being able to then get paid to support community. So that's me.
And I'll echo the random effect or random events bringing me into this position. But as first generation, I was really caught up in the UC system, and it was because of scholars like Audre Lorde that challenged me to rethink my wellness because I wasn't well. And it was tough, but it was where I like sought community and where I connected with folks and where I really invested and gave those resources back. So I love that I'm able to connect with folks, and just like, that share that mirror for them to like look at their greatness and get the resources that they need to move forward in their goals and their journey.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. Even the small glimpses, obviously, because we didn't have the time to really go in depth, were so lovely. So thank you so much for sharing. So we'll kind of dive a bit into the theme of today's event, which is essentially why therapy. We'll go into a couple of questions kind of to highlight some facets of confusion for students, definitely confusion for myself as well, so this will be very helpful. But I think we really want to start with why students should consider therapy as an avenue towards wellness. And again, anyone can start.
I was going to say, Megan, if you want to start on the therapy piece, and one of us coaches can unpack the coaching side of the coin.
I was thinking that, but I was like, nope, you went last time. Stay on mute. You went first last time. But I don't think anyone's keeping tally. So when someone says why anything, sometimes I like to say, why not? Why not me? Right? And there's a lot of reasons why not, specifically in the Black community. We have stigma that's ubiquitous for mental health, and then we have extra layers of cultural stigma, and all these different other intersectional conversations as to why we haven't been to therapy. But I do want to invite us to think about the resources that we have access to here, and access is a big question. And differs by community and identity, but to take advantage of what we do have access to and what we deserve and what our rights are. So stepping away from the word therapy for a moment, because that comes with a lot of connotation. What therapy is a space for yourself to get clarity, to understand patterns about how you behave, to acknowledge feeling, and to unpack things that have happened to you, both good. I think some things people miss about therapy is that it can also be a time to savor and to identify strengths. There's a whole branch of therapy called positive psych, which is what am I doing well and how do I do more of that for myself and my community? So it's a time to reflect. It's a time to savor. It's a really good practice of self-care where this is an hour you're not considering anyone else. You're just focusing on you and your needs. And there's a whole host of tangible skills and intangible skills that you can cultivate in therapy. One being understanding what your emotions are and what they have to tell you. Understanding your emotions as signals is a big piece of therapy that I don't like any client to leave my care without understanding, as well as self-compassion, as well as what your values are and how to align your behaviors and what you say and what you do in with that. So that's just therapy, right? But when it comes to the Black community, I really am low-key chastised for saying on a podcast a while ago that if anyone needs therapy, it's Black folks. And that's not to say that we're weak or we have problems. It's actually to say that if any community needs the care and attending and holding, it's us, because we've held so much for so long without speaking about it. So I really just want to triage us, prioritize us, put us at the top of the list of the people that really need some processing and some healing and some identifying of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how to protect ourselves. I think we know that we've been under siege for a while, and therapy can kind of help us navigate that and resist the systems that aren't serving us and relationships and dynamics that aren't serving us. So that's my snapshot on why therapy.
I can just add the piece on coaching that something that I think, Bree and Kashi, feel free to hop in if you have other angles or ways you ever explain this, but I have to explain this every time I get a new client, and that I'm not a therapist. What we do is not therapy, but oftentimes people can experience coaching as therapeutic, that it can be another space. And I think that's where I really resonate with what you were saying, that it's a space for you. And our jobs as coaches is to help you co-create that space where you can use it however you feel it's best serving you, your mental health, your well-being, whatever wellness practices you want to work on. Or some folks, we sometimes just use it as a venting space, and we all need that. And I think it's a really valuable piece of it too, that the way I sort of break down how different it might feel is in therapy, you're going to be working through some of those processing, reflecting, holding space with some of the experiences and all that stuff you're holding on to. And coaching, we think of it as, that works really well in concert with what we do as coaches, that where are you now? Where do you want to be? And how do we help create some movement around your goals? It's a little bit more goal oriented, but it doesn't mean that it's goal oriented like you got to get a grade in it, and if you don't get it right, you're going to fail at coaching. You can't fail at coaching. But I think that's a way that I sort of think about it is therapy is going to hold you from past to present, and coaching is going to hold you from present to future. And there is some overlap in how we talk about those things. But I think the way we orient around the energy of that space that we hold for you is going to be a little bit different. But that's sort of how I explain it to new folks. But Bree, Kashi, y'all are brilliant. So if you have some some smoother ways of describing this, please do.
I agree that a big part of coaching is that goal oriented. And so, yeah, there's definitely some time for processing, like, you were saying, and there's also that accountability aspect that comes into place as we wrap up each session. So, yeah, I don't know if Bree has anything else.
Not particularly. Maya, that's a beautiful way to put it. Of in coaching, we are holding you really from present to future, really thinking about visioning what do you want for yourself, whether it be doesn't have to be goals like Maya was saying, like I want to be at X place or I don't know, I want this grade. Anyway, it can be things like I'm wanting to invite more peace into my life,
Mm.
or I'm wanting to improve my relationship with someone who's close to me because I want to deepen that space. It's really about visioning of what are the things that you're wanting in various different areas of your life. It's seeing where you are now and how do we move you from where you are now to where you want to be. So that's more of what the coaching we do is really like life coaching. I don't, that means different things to different people. At this, when I was in college, I had absolutely no idea what life coaching was. That would be a completely new word. But really thinking about coaching in terms of like your life, the things you're wanting to bring to your life, joy, peace, whatever you're wanting, but how do we get you from where you are to where you want to be in that way?
Yeah, thank you all. I think this really helps in highlighting the clear benefits that both therapy and coaching and just pursuing wellness practices can bring into someone's life. I think a huge thing for a lot of students, though, especially students from marginalized communities, is a lot of stigma surrounding therapy, surrounding of just like going out and trying to like actively kind of discuss your feelings and see what it's like to improve upon that past, to come to your present, to move to your future. And so like surrounding that stigma, what do you kind of advise for students who may be scared of therapy or just may not have had the support growing up to pursue it, and kind of what you recommend for them?
I think one like small basic thing is just to realize that no one here is broken, like everyone is whole. Because I feel like, at least growing up for me, like I had mental health issues that went under the radar because of my family. It's like, well, if you need to get therapy, then like there's something wrong with you, or like you can't hold your shit down, or whatever. Um, so I think coming at that stigma from a place of, well, wanting to improve things in your life, whether it be on the coaching side or on the therapy side, like wanting to go for those things is just adding more wholeness to yourself already as a full whole person. In coaching, we call it everyone being naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. So knowing that anyone who comes into a space is already completely whole and totally has all of the resources and the skills to build whatever they're trying to build in their lives. And then as coaches, we're just there as sort of not necessarily guides, but soft guides walking next to you as we walk together into whatever that you're wanting for yourself.
I would like to add just sort of how I speak to stigma, kind of in my own Indigenous community. And I think this does carry over into other communities, that this concept of decolonization is just really, really important to me as a human being. It's work I'm always actively trying to engage in my own life and in my life as a coach. So when I think of the stigmas, I think of how much of that stigma is being shaped, formed, and perpetuated by colonization. And I try to push back against where is that stigma actually coming from, and questioning it, not in a confrontational, like throw a burn it down kind of way all the time. Sometimes, like, I've always got my matches ready, I'm here for that. But sometimes it's about just having that open, compassionate conversation about, if I'm feeling this stigma, is this stigma mine to hold, or is this something that's been handed to me, that's been ingrained in me, that I've been socialized in, that I've had to survive within? So when I think of these stigmas, I try to think of them in terms of how much power does the stigma actually have, and how much is it getting from just sort of that perpetuation, the fact that it's still happening, the fact that colonization is still a thing, and trying to make Black and brown bodies feel broken, trying to make queer bodies feel broken or less than. So for me, I think that's something that comes through in my personal coaching a lot, are conversations around decolonization and what it means to take care of ourselves. And part of taking care of ourselves is decolonizing, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that comes up in coaching a lot. So that's my 2 bits.
I love that, Maya. If I could piggyback. For me growing up, the stigma wasn't so much, you don't have your stuff together if you go. It was more, don't put our business on the street. Like, why are you going to go to a stranger and tell them about what's going on here? It was just so antithetical to how we moved. But also, I love what you're saying about what is the narrative behind the stigma, and who is it serving, and to what agenda. I've been really, anarchist list lately, but I'm like, follow the narrative and who is it serving? And if we were to follow my family's narrative around about not putting your business on the street, my mom and dad are immigrants from Jamaica. They came here in their early 20s, and my mom's a lot of wonderful things. She just retired from the Air Force at Lieutenant Colonel. That's like 3 ranks from the top. But being an immigrant at that age and at that time, kind of steeped in respectability politics and wanting to move a certain way, and not putting your business on the street, having emotions and having struggle and strife might have been seen as weakness, especially as a Black woman in the military. And so that stigma really feeds into the superwoman, Black woman trope or myth, and it kept her from being fully human, which comes with hardship, right? And has passed that down a little bit. So I still push back on that stigma. I still need to ask for things. And I think in a lot of ways, many of us, regardless of gender, can have that, where we feel weak if we need help, right? But that's just not the case. Coming from a collectivist culture, we know we're stronger together. So I do think follow the narrative, see if it's serving you or not serving you anymore, and then get what you need. Being resourceful, being savvy, utilizing all your gifts, and partnering with someone who can understand you to take that journey.
And just a little bit that I would add is also highlighting what you shared earlier, Dr. Megan, about perhaps people having the projection of like, well, it's weakness, right? If we go seek treatment or seek therapy. For example, on my experience, my dad is a very charismatic pastor. So it was all about just give it to Jesus. And I was like, yeah, it was just different. Like it worked for him and then not for me. And so also just being able to have a space where your resilience is celebrated, gets seen, it's honored, because there's struggles, right? Like the resilience comes out of that struggle. And so also honoring that and just holding space for it.
And 2 little takeaways, little sound bites here. There's no resilience without replenishment. And the conversation about strength in the community is changing. It's no longer, are you strong enough not to need it? It's, are you strong enough to give it to yourself? Because you deserve it.
Kashi, I think that was just like such a lovely sentiment that you shared, especially about knowing what you need and knowing what is best for your health and for your wellness, because it can differ from person to person. And I think learning that lesson of, sure, like turning to God and giving it to him may work for some people, works for my parents, I guess, but it doesn't always work for me. And so like really being able to discover and know yourself well enough to know where and when like you can ask for help. I think that's so wonderful. So to kind of turn a little bit, I think a question that a lot of people have is kind of especially during a pandemic where there were just like a lot of struggles that were exacerbated and highlighted and kind of created as a result of extended periods of isolation and things like that. Kind of how did that impact people seeking therapy and seeking coaching during this time, and kind of how has it been reimagined now, and kind of what can students expect if they wanted to come in to speak with any one of you guys?
I can get just my little bit out the way is that I think the shift for us as coaches, and bringing Kashi, please chime in if you feel differently. I think we saw a massive influx in interest in coaching. There's layers to that. One being that our coaching program officially hadn't really formed until December 19, which is only a couple of months before the pandemic. So we were all still just trying to figure out how best to serve the student body while also trying to figure out how to transition to everything being remote. And then at the same time, and Megan, you can probably speak to this too, of the complications that our CAPS partners had to deal with, that once folks all kind of returned back to their home bases, if it was out of state of California, that cut off service for a lot of folks because of the American healthcare system and just how lovely it is in taking care of people. And because of that, I think a lot of people were able to reach for coaching because we aren't an insurance covered service, that we are covered by the health fee, so we're accessible to any enrolled students. And for a while, we were even working with folks on leave of absence, people on flex quarters, like we were just making ourselves as available as possible. So I think for us as coaches, we saw a massive influx in people utilizing those services. And we were really happy to, because it meant that we could kind of step in and step up wherever we could to support people in whatever way felt meaningful. And I think that was especially powerful, knowing that not everyone had a home to go to, and not everyone had a healthy home to go home to. And it felt, it was challenging, but it felt really rewarding for me personally to know that I could be even just one spot where someone could find a little bit of relief for 30, 45 minutes of their week. So that's kind of where I saw that shift through the pandemic. And I still see, now that we're sort of a fixture of the Wellbeing services, now more and more people are learning about us right when they come in at NSO. So we're seeing our calendars fill up. And so we're, our team is growing. Kashi joined us, earlier this year. And it's just so great to see our team grow and be able to expand our services even more. And in that, I think as far as like reaching coaches, I'm pro like find who you need. I always try to tell people, like, you can't cheat on coaches. Like, if you want to come talk to Bree and you want to come talk to me, you want to come talk to Kashi, just find your fit, do you. I just want people to find what they need. So that's kind of my plug on, how to find coaches and how to connect with us. That just find what you need. We'll meet with you every other week or so for as long as you want. We have folks that come once, twice, 3 times, and we don't see them for a while, and then they come back. And we've got other folks that I've been seeing through the entire pandemic, and I still talk to them. So it's a wide range.
I'll chime in too. So for us at CAPS, we figured out how to go to virtual pretty quickly. And I think it's, it's interesting when we're forced to do something versus, how we might mill about to do something when we don't have to. But we went completely virtual, and we figured out some of the ethics and state licensure pieces. And the biggest difference I'll see is the acuity. So the severity of what students were bringing in as this pandemic crawled on, and it's still going on. We saw, just the compounding grief, trauma, racial trauma, fatigue, while still trying to manage academics. And so, if we were tight roping before, a lot of people were breaking down for legitimate, completely understandable reasons. And so we were at capacity, and we stayed at capacity even through the summer when we normally kind of have everyone's dispersing kind of drop off. And so that just talking about a system that fatigued our therapists. We have had some turnover. We are hiring for 6 more to come on board, but just keeping it real with y'all that the pandemic happened to both sides of the therapy chair. I know personally, I took off all of last October because I needed some recuperation time. And as a therapist, I have a therapist. So that's what we saw last year. How to reach us now, there's a couple different ways. And I always think it's good when there's multiple access points. One access point, the easiest, would be to pick up your phone and to call the CAPS line, direct line. Let me drop that in the chat to everyone. I like to say, put this in your phone, just in case. 723 3785. Can't talk and type. Why? Because that number turns into our crisis 24-hour line. So if it's 3 a.m. on a Sunday, you call that number, you still get someone for yourself, for a roommate, for anytime you want to consult with a mental health clinician. So one way is to call during business hours and talk about what you need. You would like a brief therapy, you want a referral. Some people don't know that we also help you hook you up with referrals off campus with other clinicians. If you're interested in our groups, I have a group called Thriving to Surviving. It's all about BIPOC mental health. So you can peruse our website, see what our services are, see who's on staff, and then call and get what you need. Another access point, which is a little bit more direct, doesn't require a phone screening, is to go to your Vaden portal and book yourself to a 30-minute, so shorter than the 50-minute session, but a 30-minute drop-in with a clinician of your choice. So the clinicians, myself, Dr. Katie O'Heaney, and Dr. Sierra Waitley, we are doing Black community drop-ins. So you could book a 30-minute with any one of us that you see is open and kind of get your feet wet with therapy, with talking to somebody. If it's something that's acute and you just need one, that's perfect for that. But if you want to see how you feel and roll it into something else, drop-in would be another great way to do that. So individual, group, referral, and drop-in can all start with a call or a web booking.
Well, thank you guys so much. And we will also make sure to share this information with all of you guys after this call, just to have it in a tangible place as well. But yeah, so we're kind of going to turn to student questions now. So we have a couple that were submitted through a form, but students can, everyone can just feel free to raise your hand or unmute if we do reach a little bit of a lull. But the first question, or like kind of group of questions that we received was kind of how to approach therapy, what to talk about in therapy, and how to avoid kind of feeling like a fraud. So kind of touching upon those aspects of kind of the taking the first step to turning to therapy, to turning to coaching, and just kind of making that decision for yourself.
Well, oh, sorry, Megan, you can go. All right. For coaching, I was just going to say that the bar is quite low in terms of what you can come to coaching with, what you feel like you need to prep for, or anything. Really, like Maya said, it can be a space to vent. It can be a space to talk through something. It could also be a space to see if we can find movement in places where you're feeling stuck. Coaching is really what we do as coaches, is we just create a container where you're feeling safe, you're feeling comfortable, and you're feeling like you can be your true self in all of your fullness and not have to put on any sort of face or facade for anything. And then after that container is created, then the space really becomes whatever you are needing it to be in that moment. So I would say for coaching, the bar is quite low as possible. So if you are just like not knowing what you need, but you need something, perfect for coaching. if you do know what you need, perfect for coaching. Really anything that, again, the space morphs to whatever you need. So yeah, that is what I would say in terms of how to approach coaching. Feel free to add other things, Mai and Kashi, if you have any other thoughts.
I agree, Bree. The bar is very low. There's nothing to pole vault over to get into therapy. But in your question, Gabby, I'm struck by the language. I really think language is important. It helps us set our constructs. And it sounded like this question, this person is thinking, am I a fraud for needing therapy? And I'm struck by that because I feel like I resonate with that. Before I went into my own therapy, I'm like, am I just whining or is there something going on? Like sometimes I'm like, is this worth someone else's time? Number one, yes. But number two, I think the people that ask that are holding a lot and have heard a lot. Maybe they're the strong one in their peer group and they're thinking, well, I don't have this, or I'm not struggling with that. And they're doing some comparison that might be one downing whatever their struggle or suffering is. And so they're like, well, it's not that, so I don't need to go in. And I think if you're the holder, you do need to go in, right? If your suffering is still suffering and there's room and space for you to get some attending too. The other way I'm thinking about that is having been here at CAPS for a while now, 6 years, there has been a miscommunication in the community that we're just a crisis center. Like I've heard clients tell me, oh, I can't come in. It's not that urgent. If you have time, you can fit me in, but I'm not urgent. So I'll wait. I'll let someone else take my spot. And I really love the community mindset and the let others go first who might need it more. But as a student, you are eligible for this service. It's an offering and a right to you. So I would say come in and have someone in tandem help you get the clarity of what you might be seeking and how you can use that time. Discovery is part of the work.
I think what Maya put in the chat is so important. Definitely something I've heard, especially from my parents of, oh, like I've been through worse, I've suffered through it, and I didn't need therapy. So I really don't see why you would need therapy. So I definitely think it's just like an issue that lots and lots of people struggle through. And so I think knowing that you owe your self-care and don't have to sacrifice it for other people is so important. So thank you all. So I wanna leave some time at the very end to share a little bit more about like the resources available to students. So if there are students now in the next couple of minutes that want to just unmute and ask our speakers some direct questions, definitely feel free. You can literally just unmute. Don't have to raise your hand or anything. And I am happy to sit in silence, so we can wait for a little bit.
As people are thinking about what they may want to ask, another way to get comfortable or warm up to therapy is through some amazing apps that might and podcasts that facilitate process, ask therapeutic questions. All the podcasters say this is not therapy, even though they're very therapeutic. But one app I love to give out is this Liberate meditation app. The meditation space has also been very whitewashed. So here on this app, you have Black voices, Black bodies, Black topics. So things that you can really steep in and get a little familiar with what is this space. And there's many other apps. If I compile a list, I'll send your way, Gabby, to disperse. But there's a lot of great podcasts and apps that can get you in a process space before you might go to see someone.
Maya, I do not want to put you on the spot. I noticed you're muted. So, okay.
I got
Oh,
you.
okay. Marlon, you can also go ahead and ask questions.
Hi, thank you guys for this time. I'm outside right now, but I've been listening in. And I guess you talked a lot about the stigma of going to like therapy. And I guess for some of the people you speak with, how do you, I guess, discuss approaching that conversation with families? If people want to be more transparent about like going to therapy, how do you suggest like they broach that topic, given that there is sometimes stigma in like Black communities and things like that?
Absolutely. I appreciate the question. And I think all of us coaches are going to sound a little bit different in probably how we work with this. Because for me, I think this is very much a one-on-one basis, because I think everyone's just dealing with different families, different dynamics, different circumstances, different resources. So I think the ways in which we can kind of walk through that with you, even practice walking through that with you, of how you want to talk to family or close loved ones about, if you want to be transparent about your wellness process and the things you're engaging in. But I think the things that it comes down to, or the things that are in common in a lot of the conversations that I've had in this respect, one goes back to what I was saying earlier around raising a little bit of awareness, or turning our attention to that narrative of where's the stigma coming from, questioning where that stigma is coming from, what's informing it, what's upholding it and strengthening it. And sometimes just a little bit of information being injected into the conversation, even if it's not directly about you and your wellness journey. Sometimes it's just slowly introducing more information, knowledge, looking at how our wellness and our well-being is a strength, and focusing on that is a strength, and it's a practice. And I think of it very much as, I think something that comes up a lot is thinking of it as, you know, maybe you go to the gym, or you go for walks, or you go for runs, or you do yoga, or maybe you engage in dance. Maybe there's a dance practice that you engage in, that all of these things are good for your mind and your body and your spirit in so many different ways. And so I think of therapy and coaching as just another aspect, another dimension of how we choose to take care of ourselves. And it's why I put so much emphasis on decolonization as part of that conversation, particularly in Black and Brown communities, because I know so much of what each of us holds in our homes and in our communities can be deeply, deeply impacted and informed by some of those messages and stigmas that just get upheld and really impact our ability to fully embrace where we're at in our own process. That maybe we want to try therapy, maybe we want to try coaching, and maybe we want to try acupuncture. I don't know, but it's, I think, just bringing that the gravity down from it back to a level ground, just with everything else that we do, that, you know, we got to drink enough water because our cells and our bodies and our brains need water, and kind of bringing it back to that place that it's not, oh, I'm seeing a coach or, oh, I'm talking to Megan. Like, it's not all of a sudden this gasp thing that, oh, I'm talking to Megan, and I'm talking to Kashi, and I'm talking to Bree. And this is just something that I do. And I also go to the gym, and I also get 8 hours of sleep, or I try to. I hope y'all are getting 8 hours of sleep. If you're not, no shame, but I hope that helps. But if y'all, my fellow coaches, and again, if you have other angles on that, but that's, I think it's a one-on-one thing, but those are sort of the themes it all comes back to.
Covered it so beautifully, right? And Marla, I'll just add just something to make you tantalize and think about something that happens in therapy is, you know, there's a difference between privacy and secrecy. So some things you don't have to share with family. And if you do want to, you can think about how and why, and what degree of transparency you want. But I would piggyback on what Maya said, 100%. I have had clients who, when they tell their parents, or they know that their parents will respond with guilt, like, what did I do wrong? That you need therapy. Like, did I not parent you well? So that's also something you can process through, how to send that messaging. Again, if it's something you want to share.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was so helpful. I think we have time for one more student question. If anyone else wants to unmute and ask, feel free. wait like 30-ish seconds for people to hop in.
I can ask a question. I did therapy through CAPS last year, and I'm not someone who is on Cardinal Care. So something that was like confusing for me during that time was like navigating like longer term therapy or even like psychiatry, my bad. So could you share like the resources CAPS offers for people who aren't on Cardinal Care and like support within the greater like that umbrella? Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of making that process a little smoother has been a passion point of mine, but there's so many systems that gum up the work. But thank you for asking this question. So we do have a referral coordinator now. Her name's Ariana, whose day job is to help students navigate the system because it's very intentionally murky. So we do have clinicians on our MHN panel who take other insurances other than Cardinal Care. We want to lower the burden of financial burden for you to have access. So if you have Blue Cross Blue Shield or whatever, Kaiser, military insurance, international insurance gets more sticky, but we try to match you up with someone who takes your insurance and then facilitate getting you connected in terms of intake and next sessions. We also have been expanding our different services. So now we have one where you can get another round of brief therapy, telehealth, with a non-CAPS clinician, but it's also going to be remote. That's also free. Kind of skips the insurance. Let me drop the link in the chat before we go if I can find it in time. And if not, I'll send it along to Gabby. But we have more services for non-Cardinal Care students.
Thank you.
And I know that Maya had mentioned this earlier, but I think coaching is not insurance based, so anyone can come in and talk. So I think that's a really great point of accessibility as well. But yeah, I think that is all of the time that we have, because I wanted to leave a few minutes for everyone to kind of leave a little bit more information about how students can get in touch with you, maybe your like contact or like department information, how to schedule appointments and the like as we kind of close out.
I think Bree, Kashi, and myself, we can drop our if you'd like, we can drop our group email, the Your Wellbeing at Stanford.edu is our group email. I'll share my personal email here as well if you have any direct questions. Bree shared earlier, if you scroll up in chat, the coaching.stanford.edu to reach us. Right now, our coaching team is strictly on Zoom. Until further notice, we have not necessarily chosen a date when we're going to be integrating into in-person. I know that on a coach-to-coach basis, some of us are opting to offer outdoor in-person appointments outside of our building at Kingscote. It's a really pretty area. Sometimes that's a more amenable option for folks because I know some of y'all have roommates that you're not going to get that privacy that you might need. So sometimes it's the better alternative, though I will say that privacy is not guaranteed when we're meeting outdoors. So just being mindful of that. And we take your privacy really seriously. So just something to be mindful of there. And then pre-pandemic, and then hopefully when we're eventually in a safe way, Kashi and I, both of our roles are associated with supporting community centers and ethnic theme houses. So before the pandemic, this was happening. So we'll reintegrate it when it's safe to do so. But we actually hold space within the community centers where we'll have either holding our sessions right there in the space, in either one of your staff offices, or I think prior to the pandemic, I was in the wellness room in El Centro, and then I would use the NAC director's office on Fridays, and that would be good for either scheduled sessions or drop-in hours. So that is something we're hoping to reintegrate once it's safe to do so, but just keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, you can absolutely access any of us coaches through the coaching.stanford.edu.
I'll sign off here as well. Always happy to be in these group spaces. Let's continue to gather, to savor, to heal, to commune, to strategize, to listen. I dropped the CAPS appointment link up above, but the easiest way is to call and we can figure it out from there, or go onto your Vaden portal for those 30-minute bookable with Black Caps. I'll be waiting for you. Be well, everyone.
Thank you all for coming.